Hey lifers, Dustin here, and once again it is time for the Eliminator as we slowly but surely try to figure out who the top 4 teams will be in the college football playoff for 2017. And after 10 weeks, well, we're cutting down a lot of teams. We're cutting down to not a lot of teams, I guess would be the better way to put it. We left week 9 with 14 teams still vying. How many of those 14 survived into week 10? Not a lot. And remember that after I do the official playoff eliminator, conference eliminations will be after that. Timestamps are linked in the pinned comment that I'm going to put at the very top of the comment section. So if you're interested in a specific division or conference, check that out down below. Once again, remember that the CUSA, MAC, Mountain West, and Sun Belt have already been eliminated. In the ACC, they came into the weekend with 3 teams vying for a spot, and Virginia Tech's loss against Miami knocks out the Hokies, leaving only Clemson and Miami, the likely ACC championship game, as the only 2 teams in the ACC left. The ACC is lucky to have multiple teams because the Big Ten does not. They came in with 3 teams, with 1 loss Ohio State, 1 loss Penn State, and Wisconsin left. Michigan State's lightning delayed win versus Penn State knocks out the 2016 conference champs, while Iowa's embarrassing beatdown of Ohio State eliminates the Buckeyes. Only Wisconsin, which debuted at number 9 in the first college football playoff poll, is left. The Big 12 came into the week with 3 teams still available, and we knew the loser of Bedlam was out, and that was Oklahoma State, leaving only Oklahoma and TCU left. They face off next week. In the Pac-12, lone team Washington is the only team still left, and they did win against rival Oregon 38-3. The SEC still has 2 teams left in Georgia and Alabama, both undefeated, both survived division rivals, and seem to be on a crash course in Atlanta. In the Independents, Notre Dame is still alive, and they face Miami in a huge game this week. In the American, UCF remains the only team. The Knights survived SMU and keep their hopes alive. They are looking for a little bit of chaos up at the top to see if they can actually, believe it or not, maybe, possibly wiggle themselves in. We came in with 14 teams available, and for the 3rd straight week, we eliminated 4 teams. We're down to just 10, with 3 regular season weeks and a conference championship week left. It makes me nervous that I'm going to have to put back some of those teams that I've actually taken off this list already. Of the 10 teams that remain, 5 are undefeated, 5 are 1-loss Power 5 teams. Only true eliminator game I see this weekend is TCU at Oklahoma, but keep an eye on Washington at Stanford, Alabama at Miss State, UConn at UCF, Georgia at Auburn, Florida State at Clemson, Iowa at Wisconsin, and the game of the week, Notre Dame at Miami. As far as conferences go, the ACC, Big 12, and SEC are the only ones with multiple teams, each with 2, and the Big 12 will eat itself next week. Notre Dame, UCF, Washington, and Wisconsin remain as well. So now we're going to move on to the conferences, and remember that all records that I talk about and opponents remaining are just conference specific. If your team still has to play Notre Dame, I did not put it in, for instance. We'll start with the ACC Atlantic. The only teams still available are Clemson with 1 loss and NC State with 1 loss, that 1 loss being to Clemson. If Clemson beats Florida State on Saturday, the Tigers will clinch a 3rd straight ACC Atlantic title. Will meet probably the Hurricanes in the ACC Championship. NC State has 3 conference games left. They need Florida State to upset Clemson in Death Valley this weekend, and then the Wolfpack need to win out in order to win the division. Clemson could still win with a loss to Florida State and a loss by NC State to any of the games still available. In the Coastal, you have 6-0 Miami sitting up at the top with only Virginia and Pittsburgh left. Virginia and Virginia Tech are each 3-2 and of course still have to play each other. Miami wins the Coastal with losses by Virginia and Virginia Tech next week, or by beating Virginia on November 18th. The Big Ten East is really interesting right now. You have 1-loss Michigan State, 1-loss Ohio State. They play each other this weekend. 2-loss Penn State, 2-loss Michigan. Still technically alive are Rutgers and Maryland, but, you know, just a technicality at this point. A Michigan State or an Ohio State win would eliminate Maryland and any other 4-loss team. The winner of the Ohio State-Michigan State team would have the inside track to Indianapolis. In the West, Wisconsin sits all alone up there at 6-0 with Iowa, Michigan, and Minnesota left. Northwestern is 2 losses, but they have already lost to Wisconsin, so really they're 3 losses behind Wisconsin right now. A Wisconsin win this weekend against Iowa would win the West. If they lose, a 4-loss team is eliminated no matter what. Taking a look at the chaos that is the Big 12, again, it's still kind of strange to try to figure out who is actually going to go. It makes eliminating teams a lot harder because 2 teams, just the top 2 teams, are going to go. So you don't have the benefit of knocking out certain teams within a division as you do with the other conferences. Considering 1-loss Oklahoma and 1-loss TCU play this weekend, any team with 4 or more losses next week will be out. Meaning if Texas once again loses to Kansas or Kansas State loses to West Virginia, they will be eliminated next week. I hope TCU's defense is ready with Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and Baylor still on the schedule. Oklahoma has a slightly more easy schedule just with Kansas on there instead of Baylor and West Virginia instead of Texas Tech. In the Pac-12 North, Washington is the only 1-loss team right now, but they played 1 less conference game than Washington State has. They do still have to play each other, but Washington travels to Stanford and hosts Utah, while Washington State just travels to Utah and then travels to Seattle. Stanford is right there with Washington and Cal left. All 3 of the other teams are already eliminated. A Washington win eliminates Stanford since the Apple Cup is still upcoming. And there is a decent chance that the Apple Cup will once again decide the North just like it did last year. In the South, USC got a huge win over Arizona last week at home to improve to 6-1 in the conference with only a trip to Colorado and a home game against UCLA left. Arizona and Arizona State still meet each other and have 2 losses, and have both already lost to USC. USC would clinch the division with a win against Colorado or losses by Arizona and Arizona State. The SEC East is already wrapped up. 6-0 and number 1 Georgia has clinched the East. They will be in the SEC Championship game in Atlanta on December 2nd. Trying to join them is number 2 and undefeated Alabama. They play at Mississippi State this weekend and then still have to travel to Auburn. Auburn is the SEC's monkey wrench in all of this. They host Georgia and they host Alabama, and if they win out, they will be the West representatives. So Alabama and Auburn are the only 2 teams that still control their own destiny. Miss State and LSU still need a little bit to happen here. Alabama clinches with a win and an Auburn loss. An Alabama win and an Auburn win would eliminate Mississippi State and LSU, making the Iron Bowl for the West, just like it was in 2013, when Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama in miraculous wins, and then went on to represent the West and was in the BCS National Championship game. Dropping down to the Group of 5 level, we have the American East, undefeated. 5-0 UCF sits at the top with games against UConn, at Temple, and the big one against USF, at home still available. USF, with only 1 loss behind them, needs to beat Tulsa in order for the war on I-4 to be for the division. Temple is still technically alive at 2-3, but obviously a UCF win would eliminate Temple. If both UCF and USF win, UCF-USF will officially be for the East Division. In the West, 5-1 Memphis sits at the top with games against SMU and East Carolina at home still on the docket. Houston and SMU are still technically alive with 2 losses, but a Memphis win would eliminate SMU and Navy. They would clinch with a win against SMU and a Houston loss in New Orleans. In the CUSA, Lane Kiffin's FAU Owls sit atop at 5-0, but they still have a tough trip out to Louisiana Tech left. FIU and then at Charlotte. FIU is right behind them with 1 loss, still controlling their destiny. Marshall and Western Kentucky sit there at 3-2. They still have to play each other in what will become a de facto elimination game. If FAU wins, it does officially eliminate any 3-loss team. In the CUSA West, North Texas, the Mean Green, sitting up top at 5-1 with home games against UTEP and Rice left. You may notice that those are the only 2 teams that I have officially ruled out of the West Division, which means that North Texas, in theory, should go to 7-1 and clinch, but 2-loss UAB and 2-loss Southern Miss are right behind them. A North Texas win would eliminate any and all 3-loss teams. In the MAC, Ohio and Akron are sitting up there at 4-1 apiece. They do still have to play each other next week in what will become a really big game. I went ahead and eliminated Buffalo and Kent State because of that game. 4-loss teams would already be eliminated by the time that game came around. So that would pretty much be the MAC East championship game. In the West, it was a huge win for Toledo over NIU last week. Equally big game versus Ohio on Wednesday for the Rockets. 1 loss, Northern Illinois is still behind them, but with the loss to the Rockets, they do still need a little bit of help. They need Toledo to lose 2 of their last 3 at Ohio, at Bowling Green, or versus Western Michigan at home. Central and Western are right down there at 2 losses. A Toledo win does eliminate both of them if the Broncos lose. Toledo can officially clinch if Northern Illinois, Central Michigan, and Western Michigan all lose this week. In the Mountain West, we have Boise State sitting up top, undefeated in the conference. They still travel out to Colorado State's beautiful new stadium, host Air Force, and then travel out to Fresno State, a game that could be one of two against the Bulldogs. Wyoming had a big win in the snow against Colorado State to still only have one loss and be right behind Boise. I went ahead and eliminated Utah State because they've already lost to the top 3 teams. A Boise win would eliminate Colorado State, and a Wyoming win would eliminate Air Force. Fresno State sits at the top at 4-1 with road games at Hawaii, at Wyoming, and at Boise State. They have a probably tougher into their schedule than probably any other team in the Mountain West right now. The long travel out to Hawaii, out to Laramie to face a pretty tough Wyoming team, and then the Mountain West mountain leader Boise State at home. San Diego State's right behind them at 4-2, but they have already lost to the Bulldogs. They host Nevada and New Mexico. A Fresno State win or a San Diego State win would eliminate Nevada and any other 4-loss team. And last but not least, we come down to the Sun Belt. The Arkansas State Red Wolves sit at the top, undefeated at 4-0. They do not play App State, who's right below them at 4-1. They travel out to South Alabama, host Texas State, out to ULM, and then host Troy. App State, Georgia State, and Troy are all sitting there at 4-1. Georgia State plays App State. Troy plays Arkansas State. App State plays Georgia State. So it will probably settle itself out. My big worry is that Arkansas State and Appalachian State are going to each finish with the same record and have to split the title. I really hate split titles. ULM is 4-3 with only Arkansas State left on the docket. ULL is 3-2. Idaho, New Mexico State, the teams that will soon depart the conference, sitting there 2-3, tied with USA. Any 4-loss team is eliminated going forward. So there y'all have it, the Week 10 Eliminator, both nationally, where things are starting to get a little dicey as we hit 10 teams, and in the Conference Eliminator, where we're starting to see the race shaping up more and more. Georgia's already clinched. We'll see more clinchings probably either this week, definitely next week, and of course the last week of the season as we head into conference championship games in the beginning of December. Let me know down in the comment section which teams you think are both going to get eliminated this week, both nationally and conference, and which teams do you think have a chance to make a move and make some statements this weekend as well. Let me know that down below. Thank y'all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can also click the circle right there in order to subscribe or watch any of the other videos over there to the right that YouTube has suggested for you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, until next time. We left week 9 with 14 teams still vying. How many of those 14 survived into week 10? Not a lot. And remember that after I do the official playoff eliminator, conference eliminations will be after that. Timestamps are linked in the pinned comment that I'm going to put at the very championship game as the only 2 teams in the ACC left. The ACC is lucky to have multiple teams because the Big Ten does not. They came in with 3 teams with 1 loss Ohio State, 1 loss Penn State, and Wisconsin left. Michigan State's lightning delayed win versus Penn State knocks out the 2016 conference champs, while Iowa's embarrassing beatdown of Ohio State eliminates the Buckeyes. Hey lifers, Dustin here, and once again it is time for the Eliminator as we slowly but surely try to figure out who the top 4 teams will be in the college football playoff for 2017. And after 10 weeks, well, we're cutting down a lot of teams. We're cutting down 2 not a lot of teams, I guess would be the better way to put it, at the top of the comment section. So if you're interested in a specific division or conference, check that out down below. Once again, remember that the CUSA, MAC, Mountain West, and Sun Belt have already been eliminated. In the ACC, they came into the weekend with 3 teams vying for a spot, and Virginia Tech's loss against Miami knocks out the Hokies, leaving only Clemson and Miami, the likely ACC champions. Only Wisconsin, which debuted at number 9 in the first college football playoff poll, is left. The Big 12 came into the week with 3 teams still available, and we knew the loser of Bedlam was out, and that was Oklahoma State, leaving only Oklahoma and TCU left. They face off next week. In the Pac-12, lone team Washington is the only team still left, and they did win